Welcome to the Child Health Initiative Community of Practice session. This week we will be traveling to Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and we will be talking about safe and healthy journeys to school in this region. And with us, we've got Corinne Vibert from EASST. Corinne is a Director of Communication, Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning and Inclusion. And Corinne will take us through the work of EASST across the region. We are a small group at the moment, so very intimate. We will have time for discussion after Corinne's presentation, but please put also your thoughts, comments, questions to chat as Corinne presents. So without further ado, over to you, Corinne.
Thanks, Aggie. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
All good.
Okay, thanks, Aggie. Thanks to the FAA Foundation and the Child Health Initiative as well for letting us talk about our project. As Aggie said, I'm Corinne. I think most of you know me, but I guess for the benefit of people who may be watching a recording later on, I'm the Director of Communications at EASST. EASST is essentially a regional partnership of local road safety NGOs, and we work across 14 countries in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the Caucasus. And across this region where we work, the burden of road casualties is about 2.5 times higher than across the EU. It's also a region where vehicle fleets are growing very rapidly. Cities are creaking under the strain of motorization and traffic. And so it's where improvements to road safety can make a very big difference to sort of the social and economic development of the countries. We are a UK registered charity. EAST is based in the UK. We are members of the United Nations Road Safety Collaboration. We're associate members of the FAA. We are members of the Global Alliance of NGOs for Road Safety. We partner with many other international, regional, and local organizations to implement our work. So I thought I'd just quickly explain a little bit about how EAST works and about our overall model before talking about our school zones project. The EAST model is based on the belief that local people and NGOs in the region and on the ground have the best possible understanding of the local context and the local policies and the local impact of projects, and that is really essential to good outcomes. So our goal is to be building the capacity of local NGOs to nurture this homegrown expertise and leadership of local people to fulfill this role. We do this through various different means. We provide small mentored grants to our EAST partners to implement projects. Each partner is part of our wider network, which means they have access to resources, training, expertise, as well as sort of being part of EAST international networks and memberships. Our partners often work together. They share resources and methodologies. They adapt them to their own local context, and that enables them to often save significant amounts of time and money without the need to reinvent the wheel. In addition to this, we as EAST are able to give the region a voice in the global stage and showcase success stories. And this is quite important for a region that's quite often underrepresented. So yeah, that's a bit about our model. Today, specifically, I'm talking about one of our core regional projects, which is funded by the FAA Foundation Advocacy Hub. And this is a project we are implementing across 7 countries to promote safe routes to school by advocating for 30 km/h speed limits around schools and safer infrastructure. I think it's important to recognize and say at the outset that while there are great similarities between the countries, every single country that we work in is at a completely different stage on its road safety journey. So all of our partners have their own individual action plans and methods to achieve this goal, and we work with each of them on a one-to-one basis. But for the purpose of this project specifically, we have categorized them into two streams. We have the persuaders, which include Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova. And they are countries that had or have a track record of working towards safe school zones. They have identified policy goals. And in these countries, our local partners are typically focusing their projects on getting policy change, supporting implementation of policy change, supporting enforcement and accountability around commitments made by their governments. And then on the other side, we've got the pathfinders, which include Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, and Tajikistan. And these are countries with perhaps a little further to go on their policy journey, not quite ready for a full policy change just yet. And in these countries, our partners are delivering projects to build the wider institutional capacity and awareness around the benefits of implementing 30 km/h speed limits in school zones and identifying opportunities to promote case for policy change, perhaps at a local city level. Throughout the project, we are now 4 years in. We have seen some significant achievements, which I'll share in a moment. But I think through this presentation, what we're going to focus on is some of the key methodological elements that we have applied, which sort of underpin the project and how we've implemented it. So to start with, these are some of our core achievements from the last 4 years. The project will continue to run until early next year, so we've got more to come. But as of April this year, we had over 700 schools which had reduced speed limits to 30 km/h and also implemented traffic calming infrastructure, usually by the way of speed bumps, raised crossings, sort of clear signage, painting on the roads. And in a few cases, we've added some traffic lights. We have therefore calculated that this has impacted around, well, over 600,000 children and their routes to school. For most of these schools, we have not funded the infrastructure investments, and we've calculated that that means an investment by local authorities in approximately 2.3 million US dollars. And we've calculated that for our grant investment over the 4 years, our impact equates to around €1 per child. Outside of the numbers and the metrics, we have had some success in policy change. And this is amongst our most important achievements. In 2022, Moldova updated their national road regulations to mandate for 30 km/h speed limits around schools, parks, hospitals, and historic centres. This is now being rolled out across the country, and last month, the Automobile Club of Moldova published a new national road safety program, which includes a target for 99% of schools to have 30 km/h speed limits implemented by the end of 2027. So this is something that we are now working towards with the Automobile Club of Moldova. I would like to say that they have also won several awards for their advocacy efforts that are behind these changes. Then we also have achieved good policy change in Georgia. The operational structure in Georgia is a bit different. It's road safety is a devolved issue, so it's mostly under municipal authorities. So in this approach, our partners have been working systematically with local authorities. I think counting now about 15 different local authorities, and they will continue this work, bringing in new local authorities over the next years. to implement local 30 km/h policies, but what they have also succeeded in doing in the last year with their own national road safety strategy is including 30 km/h speed limits as a recommendation. Due to the devolved structure, that's just a recommendation, it's not mandatory. So the work of our partners is about backing the efforts of that recommendation and making sure authorities are aware of it and know how to implement it. And I think, as everybody here is probably aware, policy change is a very slow process. So while we've got these major achievements in 2 countries, we're also well on the way in 2 other countries. In Armenia, we have commitments to 30 km/h from key government officials. It's written into the draft National Road Safety Strategy, which is currently being reviewed by international experts, and we hope to see some development with that soon. In Kyrgyzstan, policy recommendations have now also been put forward for a government decision by the traffic police following work with our local partner there. And this one is still in the very early stages, but breaking this ground has been a huge achievement. So we are following that up as well. So what were the steps to get here? As I mentioned earlier, each country has their own tailored approach, but there are sort of a few numbers that we were able to pull out and work around, just to show the extent to which our partners have been working. I think there's some impressive numbers here, more than 200 media appearances, working with more than 500 stakeholders, over 70 community events. So there's a lot of work that goes into getting those results that we've seen. But just now I will focus on some of the cross-cutting themes that I mentioned at the beginning, and sort of how, as a network and as a group, we have managed to make these achievements possible. So as I mentioned earlier, EASST work is always grounded in local knowledge and input. So we always work with local partners, and we always make a tailored country approach based on what is best for the country in the local country context. We work with our partners to look at local laws, think about the level of awareness and understanding of the issues amongst country stakeholders, gauge the level of community support, etc. Our partners do a lot of work with the traffic police to see what data there is locally. Very often they will measure the operating speeds of vehicles around schools, and they work with police to identify specific sites that are high risk. Typically then, once these sites have been identified, we assess the infrastructure. We have used star ratings for schools and other methodologies to assess school zones. We conducted community surveys and consultations, and really this is all to try and build up just a bigger, most informative picture as we can, to inform our approach and our priority areas, and sort of plan our route for advocacy. In 2022, I've got a picture on the slide here, we published a situation report detailing each country's level of engagement and where they are at in the journey towards 30 km/h speed limits. And this was halfway through our project, so we were able to reflect on what we had achieved to date, but really identify what were the continued barriers and what was the plan for achieving progress over the next period of the project. And this is sort of a very useful basis on which we build all of our work. The second theme is quite a big one, is decision maker engagement and capacity building. I think this is sort of the thread that runs through everything, right? It's within an advocacy project, because that's this is what you need to get the change. So how we tend to do this is to highlight a lot of the work about how speeds are linked to things like the safe system approach and how to be truly effective. There needs to be an understanding across all levels of government and society. So from the political level to enforcement infrastructure, we work with engineers and designers. We work with public communications. We work on data and analysis, to try and bring all the relevant stakeholders together and help them understand their role and responsibility within the SAFE system and how they relate to one another. In this regard, we hold training sessions, we produce resources that are tailored to local needs and the identified knowledge gaps. We often translate an awful lot of documents so they're accessible for people. And in the earlier slide, we showed that our partners had worked with over 500 stakeholders just in the last 2 years alone. So this is a big job. We're trying to reach the whole community, road safety decisions and practitioners in each country. These sorts of trainings are typically implemented by our partners themselves, who are road safety experts. They are ideally placed to share global and regional best practices with the local stakeholders in the local languages, and they really understand the local context, so they're able to connect and help local people really understand why the changes are necessary and what can be done. Another method in this theme that has been hugely successful for us is by being very hands-on in facilitating national level participation from our countries into global road safety events. So, for example, we were able to offer very bespoke and tailored advice and guidance for national stakeholders participating in the Global Ministerial Conference in Morocco earlier this year. And that really builds our trust, it builds our connection with the national stakeholders, and it sort of helps sustain the influence of our partners in the country as key road safety experts. I think an important example of how this directly impacted our project outcomes in our school zones project can be seen through an example in Kyrgyzstan, where last year, with the support of the foundation, we hosted a regional road safety summit in Georgia that was a preparatory event for the ministerial conference, which was attended by each of our partner countries and a key decision maker from their country. And in the case of Kyrgyzstan, the key decision maker was a very newly instated head of the road traffic police. And throughout the meeting, he was very engaged and was sort of contributing and learning. And he was clearly very inspired, because when he returned home, something had just unlocked in him, and immediately he was a champion for 30 km/h speed limits, and he began right away implementing a nationwide sweep of changes. And by the end of the year, over 160 schools across every single region of the country had a 30 km/h speed limit. And by the spring, the traffic police were working with our partners to develop legislation to make this a mandatory part of the legislation and the policy. What's more, that sort of facilitated for the first time ever a full delegation of Kyrgyz participants in the Global Ministerial Conference. So it just shows how these sorts of things can really unlock an important change and support the advocacy efforts. The next theme is that we focus a lot on visualization and of the evidence-based interventions. So we have found that the implementation of small-scale demonstration projects, for example, to be extremely valuable. In each country, we have implemented pilots or a set of pilots. And this approach has really let stakeholders visualize for themselves how the lower speed limits or new infrastructure will work in practice. And this is very useful to overcome resistance or change perceptions or bust myths, and make the case for wider changes at a wider level. So very often we hear the argument that, oh yes, this change was wonderful, you did it in London or you did it in Paris, but it would never work in Chisinau or Tbilisi or Bishkek, because things work differently here or the culture is differently here. And then likewise, you hear, oh, yes, that's great, that works in Tbilisi, but it doesn't work in our small town. So there's always an excuse of why it won't work in someone's local area until you can really show them. And when it is locally, people will see for themselves and experience for themselves how it can work. And this is when we see things begin to shift and we really see support begin to grow. And this has been shown through our community surveys that we've been implementing across almost all of our countries, where we saw people initially skeptical. But in the countries where we surveyed people specifically around where we'd implemented school zones, support just had grown sort of exponentially. But not just for support for low-speed school zones, their support for 30 kilometer per hour at wider urban areas also increased. So it's a real sort of important demonstration that really does shift attitudes and opinions. Beyond this, we've also found that these initiatives are exceptionally effective as capacity building exercises. We think that they amount essentially to experiential learning for local authorities, for police, for engineers, where they can learn by doing. So it just goes beyond the theory that they get through a webinar or a resource, and really enables them to see and practice on the ground. And this has been hugely successful in giving them the skills and really ingrain the understanding of what we're saying in a sustainable way. Moreover, what we have also learned through a lot of these projects is what is and what is not possible. We've been really able to identify gaps and inconsistencies in design and engineering standards in our countries that perhaps need to be updated or changed at a legislative or regulatory level. And often these gaps have proven crucial barriers to achieving our wider policy aims. So what we're able to do then is to adapt our strategy and target these gaps and unlock the change through that way. In Azerbaijan, for example, this approach has been extremely successful in building the support of the traffic police in the city of Sumgait. So at the start of our project in 2021, the police were actually very skeptical. We implemented a tactical urbanism project outside one school, and the only way that they would agree to do it is by us explaining that it would be temporary and that they could take it away if they wanted. I can confirm they've never taken it away, and it's still there and still working. But after 4 years of working on a daily basis now to upgrade 3 schools in high-risk areas, putting in new crossings, signage, addressing issues of parking, creating spaces for kids to wait. The police are now extremely supportive of our work and come to us and request changes. They request expertise from our local partners. Last year, they recommended to us that they change the speed limits at one of the schools down to 30 because they were noticing that there was still an issue. But to everybody's surprise, at the most recent school we worked at, they even requested we lower speeds down to 20, which is the first time this has ever happened in the country. It's the first 20 kilometer per hour school zone in the country. And moreover, at these sites, we can also see a measurable decrease in the number of road crashes. So what we're doing now is using this case study of Sumgait and using the police buy-in to take the model to other cities and other regions of Azerbaijan. So yeah, this is a really important case study to demonstrate the impact of these sort of small-scale infrastructure and how they can have wider benefits. Another important element of our project is building relationships and developing community support. And this is absolutely essential to success. And here our partner NGOs play a huge role. They do an awful lot of community outreach. They work with school communities, they work with neighborhoods. They inform them how and why changes are happening. So they try and bring the communities along with them, and they do a range of methods, social media, letter writing, community meetings. They go into schools, they work, canvass neighborhoods, they organize and attend community events, speak to the media, whatever possible, to reach the community. I think our partners have done it. One of the things that we also really try to do is to target drivers and people who might oppose changes, to bring them on board. And this is very crucial. So yeah, this is a big part of our work. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time. And we try to make sure that community engagement is a key part of our work. So we know exactly where we're going. Our partners in Tajikistan have been very good at this. One of our community surveys revealed that they actually have a much lower level, or had a much lower level of public support and understanding for 30 kilometer per hour than some of our other countries. So for this region there, for this reason in Tajikistan, we really focus on community outreach. Our project has targeted 3 schools where we've worked with the school communities, but also local residents, local businesses, to develop a structured approach, to find out exactly what they want. We've involved them, we've had community meetings, we've surveyed them, got their feedback, we've involved them and presented to them the designs of the school zones that we wanted to transform, to get their feedback and thoughts on it, and explain to them exactly why each part of the design is needed and what the impact of it will be, so that they can come along on the journey and understand what's happening. The third theme of our fifth theme of our work that we try to do is to make, as I mentioned before, make international best practice and case studies accessible as possible to our key stakeholders. Each of our countries in this project speaks a different primary language. Very few people at the police level, the local authority level, the engineer or design level are fluent and confident in English. So it's really valuable to have resources and guidance translated into local languages, and presented to them in a user-friendly way. So what we did try to do through a lot of the reports that we do is translate and adapt international best practice, not only to local contexts, but into other languages. So we've developed our assessing and reporting on road safety in school zones toolkit, which is used by our NGO partners, local stakeholders and authorities to evaluate the immediate area around schools, to assess key risks and consider what interventions could be made. And this also signposts to a number of globally available tools, such as star ratings for schools or GDCI guidance. We have developed a community engagement toolkit that's actually developed in a partnership with Asian Development Bank in Mongolia, but it's been used by our partners in Mongolia to support school communities and implement community-led and co-designed road safety projects around schools. And we also have this Moldova case study report that explores exactly how Moldova almost achieved the global target of reducing road fatalities by 50% during the first decade of action. But importantly, we talk about how that grounding contributed to the success that they saw in 2022 with the policy change, and how it is a long game, and how a basis really supports overall policy change. We've prepared many other resources as well at country levels, and we also support our partners to translate and promote international guides, such as the GDCI guides, which we've translated into Georgian and Ukrainian, and that's a key part of our work as well. The final sort of important theme that underpins our project is about the added value of integrating our work with outside opportunities and finding linkages and openings to advocate for our policy goals and show how show how 30 km/h speed limits have co-benefits that support government targets in perhaps other areas. This includes connecting our objectives with other projects that we are implementing. For example, we have been implementing a project in Central Asia in parallel to this project, aims at promoting active travel, which of course speed plays an important role. We have been working with IRAP and the IRF, funded by the UN Road Safety Fund, to update road safety design standards across 3 pilot projects, 3 pilot countries in Central Asia. And we just launched last week this guidance, and that will have a far-reaching impact on our ability to improve school zone safety standards in the future with better designed roads, particularly around schools. Likewise, we have, as I mentioned, we've sought to connect our project with the development of national road safety strategies in Moldova and Georgia. 30 km/h is written into the strategies, and we're working with other opportunities where strategies are being developed in our countries to do this. We have partnerships with development banks, road safety observatories, where we promote lower speeds as part of our key work. I mentioned earlier the occasion of the Global Ministerial Conference in Morocco, but over the past few years in our region, we've also had COP29 in Baku, FAA conference in Uzbekistan, which will really help us also engage decision makers and meet with them, advocate for our objectives. So all of our work sort of comes together around these global advocacy events and big moments. Just to round off where we're at now, we've got another 8-9 months of this project to go. But we also then want to continue the focus of this work from 2026 and beyond. Through this, some of these ideas are just in the early stages at the moment, but this is where we hope to go next, which is obviously further advocacy for 30 km/h school zones, providing technical assistance to support with the implementation of these policies. We're thinking about formalization of some national level school zone advocacy networks. We're looking at perhaps expanding beyond school zones specifically to wider routes to school, based on data. We are looking to address issues of enforcement and particularly tolerance levels. In many of our countries, the speed tolerance is over 10 km/h. So even if a speed limit is 30, 40 is still, common for people to be driving at. And there's nothing that we can do about that in terms of enforcement. So we want to look at that as an issue. We will be working with our partners to follow up on commitments made at the ministerial conference. We will be linking to the UN Decade of Sustainable Transport as that's launched later this year. And with that, we'll also be continuing to support capacity building of our partners, and see how that goes. So yes, thank you. I think got just about on time. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Corinne, thanks so much for this whistle-stop tour of your work, and it's really, really rich and really interesting. I think bringing examples from all the various countries across which you work makes it really real and exciting, and from the programmatic point of view, but also advocacy outreach. So thanks for that. Colleagues who are on the call, if you have questions, please raise your hand. But since I've got a mic, I will start with some questions. And before we dive into the programmatic side and advocacy side of your work, I also wanted to check and speak to get you to speak a little bit about um, the political aspect of your work. Your region has been struggling with political instability for many, many years. Last few years specifically severe. So how does this impact your work and work of EASST, your network, and a wider prioritization of road safety across the region?
Thanks. Yes, that's a very good question. I think it's no secret we have issues in our region. There's a lot of political instability. There's a major war happening. Um, uh, but I think for us, what's really strong about EAST and what really enables us to keep working and keep making the impact that we do, even within this context, are our local partners, and the fact that we're civil society, we're not government, but our local partners are so embedded in national road safety councils. They have MOUs with the police at different levels that aren't so affected by political changes, that we can sort of overcome that challenge, so to speak. I mean, our partners are the ones that are always consistently there. So, governments come and go, but civil society is always there, and our partners are always at the table, almost no matter which government is in power, which is real testament to them and their connections and their advocacy. So I think really the answer is yes, civil society and our engagement at that level. Obviously, we keep track of what's going on in the political context. It's not easy. Some of our countries, it's getting more challenging. Gilla is here. He can tell us about Georgia being a particularly difficult situation at the moment. But I think what we have to do is just keep going, keep promoting road safety and keeping it on the table. I mean, even in countries like Ukraine, it's not part of this project anymore. It was in the first year. Road safety is actually a priority for them as a country, despite the war. I was at a conference during Road Safety Week that was held in Ukraine, and they pointed out that demographically more children died in road crashes last year than they died in shelling. So for a country with a huge demographic problem because of a war, you can't afford to be losing children on the road as well. So it's actually an extreme priority for them. So yeah, even though there are other things and other distractions going on, road safety always still an important consideration.
Thanks. Yes, and the role of civil society in the process are definitely super valuable. Um, Now just moving to your work, and you've highlighted some really excellent achievements. 700 schools with 30-kilometer school zones. That's amazing. 620,000 children that are safer thanks to your work, and 2.3 million US dollars invested by local authorities. So that's amazing. So I just wanted to focus on the last one because that's practically important for the entire community and community of practice of CHI. We all want to go from implementation of pilot projects to scale ups, and we all want to see local authorities, national authorities investing in our interventions and taking them to scale. So, how have you achieved that, and what are the key ingredients of making the case to the authority, making them to put intervention into their budget, because that probably requires some serious work, and then scaling up across the city, municipality, a country.
Thanks. I think the key thing is the policy change. I mean, the countries where we've seen the biggest number of schools are Georgia and Moldova, but Kyrgyzstan is also in there with a very high number of schools in that 700 plus figure. So having the national policy is obviously a very big driver. But I mean, for us as well, it starts with the demonstrations. It starts with showing this is what can be done. This is the best practice approach. These are the interventions you need, and they don't necessarily need to be hugely expensive on a per school basis. It's a traffic lights and some it's a crossing and some speed bumps and some new signage. So I think demonstrating the impact and demonstrating that it doesn't have to be hugely costly is a big one to overcoming the initial resistance, but also then having those examples where you can show the impact, you can show that speeds have reduced, you can show that the number of crashes have reduced, you can show that communities are happier and more supportive and feel safer as a result of them. And yeah, that's sort of how you get them on board and sort of bring about the whole wider change. So for us, that's essentially how it's been. We've done the demonstrations to show what we need, and I think in several countries, well, in a couple of countries, I think Moldova and Armenia, two of them, the government's actually requested us to put in pilots to show the change before they would agree to changing the policy. So I think these demonstration projects are really, really valuable. And I think, yeah, they need to be considered for the wider impact that they have. And that's sort of how we got there.
Sure.
I think I can add a little bit more.
Yes, Gallagher.
Yeah, I just want to continue that always difficult to start and to when you have already example and in our case when we started and working with the Fire Foundation we implemented some small pilot projects in in Zugdidi, if you remember, and in Zugdidi in one district and local authority so that because before implementation they had some fear, as you know, when you do such changes, there is some opposing from drivers, and but when they saw that there on the contrary, support for such initiative from local community, then continued this change throughout the city. So very important to have this small, quick, small scale pilot projects, and it helps to change this, I would say, myths or mentality of the of decision makers to and get more support from local community for that change. And pilot projects are extremely important in our case when we talk about safe school zones, and that helped us also to talk with traffic police because uh, traffic police also got engaged that when local communities asked for more changes, local authorities asked, then traffic police, central government more keen to support initiatives from the bottom up.
Thank you, Gela. Thank you. That's and yes, I think we all agree with the importance of the pilot projects. The important part is how you go from that point to the nationwide implementation. So maybe I can see Tatiana here. Corinne already mentioned the great experience, great work in Moldova, the National Road Safety Strategy. We also know that there is aim in Moldova to implement 30 kilometers per hour speed limit at 99% of schools by the end of 2027. So that's a great target that you've got in country. How you and I don't mean you, Tatiana, from ACM, but how your government goes about it, and crucially, how they find planning to resource it financially. This is really critical, because this is how we bringing them on this journey and making sure that they finally putting investment into interventions.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Thank you for your question. So, yes, we are thrilled to have such a target and such a point, let's say, at the National Road Safety Program, because you can understand that it was promoted and advocated by the ASEAN to be included in the plan. And this is what the government and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Regional Development put on their own responsibility and financial contribution and funding, and it will be taken from the allocated budget from the Ministry of Finance. And that's why it will be like some pilot interventions done by the ministry, and we hope that it will be in the same route for the whole period. But as I understood, they have different projects like EBRD reconstruction project or the World Bank, and they committed to implement this target by their own. We don't hear you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tatiana. And this speaks really nicely to what Corinne was also mentioning, bringing different stakeholders, right? We really need to make the community of people, the coalition of people who really believe in the same cause and can contribute. And that sounds like this is what you are doing, collaboration with the development banks, bringing different agencies is the way to make it happen and to see the scale in our end of hours. We've got a few more minutes left, so if anybody has a question, please raise your hand. If not, I've got one more question. I've got a few more, but actually I'll just focus on one to Corinne. Just raise your hand using the signal. Corinne, you also mentioned the media and that you are using this very frequently and effectively in your work. So just how, if you could just elaborate a little bit on this, on the importance of media in the political process and advocacy for the policy change in road safety specifically.
Thanks. Yeah, so and there's big differences from country to country. Gela and the Ragley can say in Georgia that their media engagement is very good. I think almost every week they are on some kind of breakfast show or radio station talking about road safety, and through this, you're getting into the psychology of communities, but also the politicians. So they are hearing these messages again and again, and seeing that people support them. And so when it comes to a decision in the parliament or local council, they are more inclined to think, yes, this is what people want, this is what we're asking for, this is the international best practice, this is the effective way to do it. So yes, we approve the recommendation. In other countries where media has been a little more difficult to crack, this is still what we're trying to do. We're trying to build media awareness around the safe system approach and to why 30 kilometers per hour is so important. We try to link it with other issues that are of interest to the general public and to the media. We're linking it to the climate change issues, link it to things like inclusivity, to making streets and cities livable, to try and raise that awareness of road safety as being beyond speed and roads, but also just about generally making life better for everybody. And so we've been doing some training on that. We've got a big training coming up in Armenia on this topic for journalists, so that we are leading the public discourse as well as sort of political discourse on why these things matter.
Great, thank you so much, Gela. Question?
Just exactly wanted to add this, and I would say that we all know that there are so many competing issues with road safety, yes, to get attention. So we are exactly doing that to put this issue almost every day on the agenda somehow, to highlight importance. It's to connect it with cost saving, economic cost, to connect it another issue, to connect it climate change. So we indeed work so wide variety of stakeholders, including the international organizations, local communities, central government, and media helps us to really deliver this simple messaging. Because messaging is very important when we talk about lowering speed, safe school zones. As an example, we sometimes we connect with as Georgia wants to be touristic, developed country. So if we say about improving convenience or accessibility for them, we connect it with road safety. This connection, we are trying to connect these issues, road safety issues, with other development issues too, and highlight it from all points to keep this, I would say, attention towards our issue.
And by the sound of it, you are doing this very, very successfully in Georgia and east across the entire region. I think we've reached the end of this webinar. It's been really interesting to hear the story of EASST and the great work that you are implementing across the region. There is, of course, much more we could have discussed, and lots of nuances to your work. For those who will watch the recording, you can always contact Corinne and colleagues from EASST for chat, for more information. But for this hour, that's it. Thanks so much for your participation.